I am fascinated with AI through the mere fact that I am now on ChatGPT probably at least 3 hours a day.
So can I tell you something? For every time that you put in a ChatGPT question, it is estimated that the amount of power that question demands is the equivalency of taking your phone and charging it from 0 to 100
You're kidding me.
60 times. Well, hold on.
Not just once, 60 times.
60. And when you create, like when you demand power like that, it radiates heat and you have to reject that heat. And the way to reject that heat traditionally is with water. It takes a 16-ounce bottle of water to reject that heat. So when you worry about your kids running upstairs and leaving the lights on in the bathroom, you're like, I could live with that, versus the massive volume of power AI demands. I'm not worried about AI. AI, one, I think will be something that helps solve many of society's problems, regardless of the Terminator and all the bullshit.
And more importantly, aid in learning of the next generation.
100. Well, I think that
I'm not talking about writing their papers. I'm talking about just
learning.
And actually, I do believe AI assists with critical thinking. It may help me,
and screening.
And screening.
Mental health.
But AI, I say, hey, so when I go on Fox or News Nation to talk about a subject, I go right to ChatGPT to maybe give me a different perspective that I wouldn't have initially considered because of the mass amounts of information that it has access to. I'll break down this situation based off the history too, because history is so vast. I can't research for a 3-minute TV interview on a certain subject, and then I've got to put it into my own words or give my perspective on it. It's been a tool. And it goes to the Rogan podcast, and I can't remember the individual. He said, it's the fear that AI is going to replace humans. He said, no, but humans that use AI will replace humans that don't. I thought that was probably the quote of the year. But here's the thing about technology, and this is why, I grew up in Silicon Valley. I got the privilege of watching that growth, and then I left in 96 and missed the .com bubble. But one, Silicon Valley is still the most innovative area in the world, and Austin is rapidly growing. I don't think Silicon Valley will ever be replaced. And California is such a beautiful state, regardless of the sort of politics.
Yeah.
And I can have an opinion on that. I came from that area.
Take a number. Yeah.
But the unintended consequences in the speed at which technology is driving business, there's a lot riding on the technology sector because now you've got to deal with unintended consequences in a much quicker decision-making cycle.
But do you know what happens? Like, have you noticed that the longer it takes us, the longer that we have a bad habit, the longer it takes for us to break it, right? So if there are things that we've done to ourselves that we have quickly, and we're able to discover the most harmful things to us faster now because of technology, right? I mean, and with that, we're able to pivot, rotate, make adjustments or changes as necessary based on what we want to do. If we have the intent to do well, then we could, objectively, you're taking that data and you're making a pivot, right? But that information is going to flow upstream and downstream in ways that'll have, like, I'm so happy for you. You're getting ready to have another one, right?
I am. Scared shitless. Scared. There's a point at which you become, and don't get me wrong, you talked about, to people who are scared and fearful usually don't take the leap. I was scared and fearful on every combat mission I went on. But, I used to say a prayer, and I don't want to repeat it because it's very personal, but I pray to God on the MH-47 ride out to insertion, looking down the fuselage, through my nods of all the guys. And I'm sure they had their own sort of, I pray to take care of my family, but more importantly, take care of my guys. And I offer my life as an exchange to God. Much more poetic in what I would recite. But I was scared and fearful, scared for the lives of my guys because they were the one fighting the firefight. I was a guy with the directional antenna off the back, talking on SATCOM, and I was proud to do that job. Yeah. But fearful that I would let my guys down. That's the type of fear I had, is God, please don't let me fail my guys. Like, whether it's getting close air support in
That's a healthy
rapidly,
fear.
It was a healthy fear. And that's when you're part of a team. I think one of the biggest fears is, God, please
don't let him down.
Yes. And that also points to the fact that I always tell people, you know what that means? You're a good human being.
Yeah.
You're a great human being.
Well, look, not everybody, a lot of people work in collections and groups. Not everyone works on teams. Teams care about the success of others, where other groups normally only care about their own success. And that's the difference.
CIA. But go ahead, keep going.
Well, I mean, I could go, there's a lot of groups in which there's an environment that exists. Think of it in my industry. Okay. Let me again, and I love this conversation because we could go back and forth on a few things, but my industry, as I said, is under two existential threats. One is a shortage of people and talent, and the other is power. And we need people to go put power online, right? So everything else, like the supply chain, generators and transformers, all those commodities will come as a byproduct of having a better solution around people, because people tend to be leaders. And then you have power, which is what's required, because AI will hit a plateau. I mean, if we don't solve this power problem, we will never be able to unleash AI to really find the benefits in society that we hope to achieve, right? And I think we want those things because if the beauty about the data center industry is it's pushing a tipping point, as Malcolm Gladwell would call it, into our economy with regards to what we use as the biggest or the primary form of power, right? So today it's, fossil fuels and oil, and that's unscalable based on I just told you what ChatGPT is. So if you're doing it for 3 hours, you're chewing through power and you just don't know it, right? And that's okay, because that power is used at the data center and you're buying cloud as a service, or there's a lot of things that are going on with ChatGPT, but that's one of, let's say, a dozen really powerful AI platforms right now that you could go to get information or assistance on anything that you want that's generative AI, right? And if you think about that, that's a lot of power that's being demanded. And what we did was we started building our data centers as hub and spokes in the NFL cities of the United States. And we connect the fiber backbone from 1 Wilshire, LA to 121 East Van Buren in Phoenix to 350 Cermak in Chicago to 60 Hudson in New York. And from there, you could pick up Telia Sonoria in Mexico or in Italy if you want an ATM transaction, right? But then we go into the suburbs, because all those downtown markets where the real estate's expensive and the power is allocated, we have to go out into the burbs to where we could get larger volumes of green fields and build larger data center farms. And what we can do is we can put carrier connectivity back into those carrier hotels of the NFL cities, and that way we could still, not have to battle the latency issues.
The power of the NFL.
Yeah, no kidding. They have no idea, right? But I'll tell you, if you look at what's happening now, is the adoption rate of this emerging technology is exceeding if we had a 10%, like cloud had a 10% hit above IoT. So we had this huge impact where our industry is growing at a double-digit CAGR. And our industry grows faster than every other industry. You could look it up. What industry has the greatest growth? Guess who grew the most during COVID? When Microsoft announces they had a 750% spike in cloud demand in the first week, technology won. Like our industry, I grew by like 12 to 20 people during that major upswing of COVID because technology was the number one crutch that helped society get through that shithole of a time. And the more adoption of technology just means a greater demand of data centers. And AI, we can't build data centers. Like right now, we cannot build data centers fast enough, and we can't put power online fast enough. So if you look at what AI is going to do relative to what it did for cloud, which cloud exploded this industry. Well, it depends on who you talk to.
Some people going to dwarf it exponentially.
Well, Michael Dell just said last week that it would be 100x what the cloud demand is. It's changing society. Data is the most valuable commodity in the world now, right? So we live in a digital economy, and technology will be the beginning and the end of limitation for every other business. There's things that you won't be able to do without technology, and to have that technology, you'll need a data center engine. What I was trying to say is, God bless the fact that you have a brand new one coming, but your baby will have a job in an industry that hasn't even been invented yet. That job doesn't exist today, and this industry will be at the top of the lexicon for everybody. Your kids will all know what data centers are. They'll be learning about those things because this industry is the new automotive industry.
And Kirk, that's going to put a smile on your face. So they're going to be pioneers. Who doesn't want to be a pioneer?
I don't know.
Every human being wants to
be first. Yeah,
they want to be first. There's a sense of pride there. We in the Navy, we call it a plank owner. Yeah, like you're the first on a submarine, you commission it, you're a plank owner. It's amazing to the level at which you guys have innovated and walked into massive problems that you just couldn't have anticipated at the time you're adopting or bringing the technology to market.
But that's what I said. Like, you can't get ahead when you're trying to get even in an industry that reinvents itself every month. And there are people like Mike, I don't think it occurred to you just how much of an impossible job it must have been for you to try to transition yourself while building the companies that you've built. Because we haven't even got into all your companies and all your books and all this shit you do. And like, you've been on Rogan, you've been on 1,000 podcasts. You're fucking everywhere, right? To do that and still be trying to transition yourself while having a baby. Like, hey, listen, bro, you don't have a cape. You don't walk on water. That's a pretty hard task. I think that it seems like it's just another day for you because that's how people like you are wired. But that's a lot of shit for a lot of people to,
and I think that's a fallacy. People see what we want them to see, and people make a lot of preconceived notions about me. And I'm going to tell you, I struggle with the same thing that any human does: self-doubt. Relationships. Do I have what it takes? Maybe I have the ability to say, F it. Let's just give it a shot. Let's step into the arena. What's the worst that can happen? And in the everyday where we talked about failure, like, people have a threshold, but I'm going to tell you, failure is life's greatest mentor from which this is not new.
I love it. I don't learn anything from the shit you write.
Let me tell a story, because you were talking about in his name, the Delta.
Oh, Bill Mazzetti.
Bill Mazzetti. And Bill knows this well. And I'm probably one of the only SEALs that, no, I'm joking, but very few. Oh, dude. Amazing organization. Got to spend an exchange tour over there, and I was just shocked. Love those guys. But one of the best stories, which became a watershed moment in special operations history, and the older generation will remember this, and I'm getting my dates wrong. I believe the Iranian uprising, Islamic uprising, was in 1979. They took 52 hostages from the U.S. Embassy. Some were active duty.
Carter was president, yeah.
Yes. Well, Delta was formed around the same year, but Carter didn't authorize a hostage rescue attempt until, and this is all public information.
Yeah.
I'm very cautious not to.
They made movies about this, yeah.
Authorized a raid in 1981. And there were
airplane crashing the helicopter or something.
There were so many things wrong with the military. They just didn't know what they didn't know. And the reason, I'll get to why it's a watershed moment, but yes, they landed in the desert, a black landing zone, and a Air Force C-130 collided with a Marine helicopter. And there's pictures, graphic pictures of 8 bodies laying amongst the rubble. And they were going to drive, the Delta guys were going to drive in to Tehran and attempt a very daring hostage rescue. Guys were not coming home, but that's what they live for, so that others may live. And the commander on the ground made a very difficult decision. He said, "Guys, I need you to get back on the plane." Even though they were trying to recover, find a way to get to the 8 bodies, and for the viewers, think jet fuel that's on fire just
everywhere.
Yes. And what I was told, I talked to a guy who I highly admire, General, it will come to me. He was one of the founding members of Delta Force. It's in the book. Jerry Boykin. Thank you. Memory. Talked about how some guys had suffered burns trying to find a way to pull those guys out. So they arrived back in Oman, where they staged out of. And it's funny, you talk about the speed of information. The British contractors running the airfield in Oman, while they were flying back, had already figured out, like, hey, those are the guys that just tried the attempt. And what Jerry Boykin told me was they took it hard. Their first sort of big operation
first one was
by textbook definitions of failure. And knowing that those type of guys, when they fail, they take it hard. And I take failure hard. I get in the fetal position sometimes. Maybe it's 5 minutes, maybe it's an hour. The one time I spent an hour in the fetal position is when I placed a veteran into a COO position, and he did something unethical, and I had to deal with the boss because that's a representation of me. And we gave the money back, and I was just destroyed. But the British contractors grabbed a case of beer and wrote on a piece of cardboard, drove over to the tents where those guys were staying, and the Delta guys weren't there. They had suffered this failure, and you know what they did? They went right into what we call the after-action review, which I know the private sector always hears about. There's a reason we talk about it, because it's an art. It is the single greatest tool for an organization to enhance and accelerate both individual and organizational development, and it doesn't cost you a thing. It is a routine. It's a system. Yeah, time is money. I get that. But I learned so much from those after-action reviews. Well, on the note, it said, "To you all, from us all, for having the guts to try." And what came from that, and still within special operations to this day, we still utilize lessons learned from that failure. But that also led to the Cohen-Nunn Amendment to the Defense Authorization Act. I'm probably getting that wrong, which led to the creation of SOCOM and the JSOC.
Yeah.
From that failure. And, you guys are in an industry where, fail fast, rapid iteration, and you're going to get some stuff wrong. You're going to get some stuff wildly wrong. But the thing I'm interested is, and this is me not knowing enough about the industry. I have talked to data centers, and I loved it. Like 1,000 workers actually building the data centers, and they brought them in shifts of 1,000 in Albuquerque, and then in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. There was 2 separate companies that brought me in, and I loved it. In fact, one guy came up afterwards and gave me a St. Jude medal.
Oh, nice.
And I have it at home. He's like, "I have a feeling you need this more than me because you travel a lot." And it was great connecting with just those good Americans who build the infrastructure that we utilize so much. But the resilience of the employees within the data center, because you guys it just doesn't stop.
It's awesome. I look at it as job security. We used to joke when I first started, I was building a big data center in Grapevine, and it hosted a managed.
California?
I'm sorry.
Grapevine, Texas?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was the first time I was building a data center. I think it was, maybe it was tongue in cheek, but they're like, "Yeah, this is basically like most of the stuff that's in here is going to be for porn, right? The manager, the client that's in there is someone that hosts a lot of porn sites." And I remember thinking, I'm like, man, back when I was driving submarines, I would have never thought like, well, damn, I'm going to be building these amazing, you know what I'm saying? But you're building these incredible facilities all over the place. I mean, I remember they had an incident at that place, and it was like the same data center hosted whatever that was like, it was like Justin Timberlake's Twitter was on there or some shit. And I remember that they had an outage, and he started tweeting about it, I guess, or something. But look, we get to build these incredible things, and you don't need a technical background, right? What I was saying is my co-founders are both Army bullet sponge infantry guys. And going back to something that you said, there was a time, I mean, my industry does not lack genius, and it does not lack intelligence, right? But it does lack a lot of leadership, and it does lack a lot of courage.
That's
right?
a lot of industries, yeah.
And that's why I think most companies have a veteran, at least in some element of operations, because we can do better when we don't have it all figured out. We can operate on the commander's intent. Commander's intent is everything sometimes, right? So I try to do my best to express that to others, and then I have this incredibly mean person on my team that will always hammer me for not expressing to that. Like, well, did you explain to them what success looks like? Then you don't get to get mad about that. You probably know exactly who I'm talking about, right? And I'll say I needed a lot of training. Like, I hit a plateau as a leader where I needed someone that had a greater emotional range than me. People like the guys that I started, or even the Carly, people like yourselves that have been in, this industry is called the data center industry, and there was a time they called it the mission critical industry. Mission critical was really a subjective term. I believe that the brokers from like CBRE or JLL probably invented it. Mm-hmm. And it said, like, if you have an infrastructure and if you were to have an instant of downtime, if you could quantify that downtime in death or by a loss of revenue by $1 million a minute or some shit, then you're a data center, right? That's kind of how originally I was building hospitals and I was building FAA towers, they're pushing 10. Those things can't go down. They have to be tracking these planes where they're at. So those are the types of mission critical environments. You can't be in the middle of an open heart surgery or someone's brain and all of a sudden the lights go out because there's a storm and they're like, whoopsie. Like, that's the type of stuff that I started building. And then we got into these data centers, right? I've been in the industry since 2000. So if you look at like the ways that we've been building these things, we change quite a bit. And the volume and velocity in which we build at is crazy. And there's a lot of technical people that are in here, but But I always was like, why don't I go find people that come from a different mission critical background? Like your mission critical background already, right? You have 20 years of mission critical in you. And what I mean by that is the mission critical industry doesn't measure it in we measure it in downtime, but in the military, we measure that mission critical element on our own mortality. You had to measure that. There's times when you're going out and being like, listen, if it's got to be someone, let it be me, right? Like there is no greater love than the man that will lay down his life for his brother, right? And we are our brother and sister keepers. So that's how we are conditioned to go put the team first, the mission first. And I think that those are things that you can adopt into a paramilitary type culture. You don't have to be former military to get that. You just have to believe, you have to love the people you work with, and you have to want to be in a team.
Inspire them to adopt those cultural norms. You know,
the emotional range that you guys have is like, look, there's abstract.
I'm seeing where you go with this.
Well, there's abstract thinkers and there's linear thinkers. And like a lot of submariners do an incredible job in operations because like, listen, man, we measure 7 times before we cut once on a submarine because we don't have the ability to compromise the integrity of what we do, because you could open one muzzle ball valve and sink an entire crew like that. And we're living in a part on a crew where we're giving that power to the junior sailor, right? So it's not like anybody could harm yourself. But I remember being pressure tested at a company I used to work for, and the CEO came out and shit hit the fan in the worst way that could happen in this industry. The worst thing that you can do is lose. I mean, the 3 KPIs are safety, schedule, and budget. But the reality is if I meet all of my schedules and I am under on every budget, it doesn't matter for shit if I'm not sending everyone home that came to work that day.
Yes.
And there are plenty of times, this is a very kinetic and dynamic industry. There's 1,000 people working on these data centers. I'm getting ready to start one that
in shifts, I'm assuming
24/7, 365, 3/8 shifts, right? So, and we're getting ready to go into those programs, and the coordination of the trades. There's a lot of risks that is invented or injected into a program when you put condensed schedules and pressure on schedules, a lot of date related motivation in this industry. So there's a lot of this all the time. And what I've learned was I had a CEO one time who was uncomfortable with me because I wasn't uncomfortable in that situation. And I have a right-hand kid who is exceptional. He's combat, traumatic, and he's done it all, Army guy. And I remember I go, hey man, are you doing okay? I guess we're supposed to be a little bit more emotionally unsettled than we are today. And he goes, Kirk, everyone's going home today. No one got shot today. No one stepped on an IED today.
Perspective.
He's like, we got this. We're going to be fine. And when I say, I didn't want to interrupt you again, but I'm like, the emotional range, you were talking about the emotional gift, or I forget how the keywords or tricky phrase you use, but you're like, they have a stronger set of emotions. But I'm like, the emotional range, their meter goes this all the way down to 10 instead of the average person that goes to 4. You know what I'm saying? But they're like, look, we're not even in a pressure tested environment yet. Like, we got this. Like, you know what I'm saying? But there's something that comes from that mindset, that conditioning that you guys have. The combat infantry people, I don't have that like you guys do. I come from a submarine where we're like, let's read the 1 lines again. Let's make sure we go through the entire SOP and MOP 5 more times. Let's make sure that everyone signs off on it before we do it, because we can't afford to make that mistake one time, right? So we spend so much more time in the conditioning, the training, in the linear checklist, where the combat person is more abstract, where like, you have a plan. Tyson said it best. Everyone had a plan until I punched him in the face, right? I'm sure that you guys have a better ability of maintaining the integrity of executing upon a very specific training plan, because you're at the tip of the spear. Strength through attrition is going to give you a better execution rate, but the fleet doesn't operate at that same capacity of output, but it's higher than their civilian counterpart probably in most cases. Their emotional range is high. If you're on a carrier deck and you're launching planes, you're moving hundreds of millions of dollars worth of assets around that could fall off the ship. You could fall off the ship, right? So there's so many things that we get exposed to that are mission critical coming from the military, that it automatically lends itself to our advantage coming into a mission critical industry. There's no other industry that would be so perfectly aligned to us coming out. Does that make sense?
It does. And you're absolutely right. And you use the word conditioning. Conditioning is design or an outcome of training.
Sure.
Now, we understand this well. We do have the luxury of just, I mean, again, 24/7, 365 in the military, everything is leadership training. When somebody fails, we don't view that as an opportunity to crush somebody. We see that as a leadership opportunity, especially for the ones around them that saw them make that mistake. Now, how you handle that will determine if people come forward with their mistakes, and that is a great sign that you have a good culture. And I'll tell you a different story about an organization, I won't name it, within your respective industry, but you look at leadership training, and this goes back to the Henry Ford story, and I'm sure you've heard this. Ford, when Henry Ford was still with the company, was suffering from efficacy, basically efficiency issues, quality control, and they were squabbling about what to do to reverse the current situation. And somebody said, well, we need to train our people. And somebody said, well, what if we train our people and they leave?
What if we don't, they stay?
Exactly. There are organizations that even the military has gone and studied that just have world-class leadership development programs. I mean, you look at historical business case examples like PepsiCo had like the junior officer training course. Johnson & Johnson is phenomenal to the point where they actually get into human performance. And so many companies don't do that. To actually get into the human performance of sleep, stress inoculation, stress management. A lot of companies during economic downturns, the first thing to cut is, even if they have it, is training, when actually you should be doubling down. There's a lot of, and COVID is a perfect example. There's a lot of companies that, we had the biggest economic boom in the history of the nation between 2015 and 2019. And when consumer spending is up and money's rolling in, people like to relax during comfortable times, during good times. That's actually when you need to be going hard. Hey, we need to continue training our people because I don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now. And nobody could predict at the speed of COVID. And there are companies that are no longer with us because their people were not conditioned to turbulent times because they didn't train them. So you look at the data that you look at SHRM, Forbes, the Conference Board, American Institute of Leadership, HBR, they've all shown the data about the impacts of leadership on culture, on employee output, on employee engagement, on even employee retention. And these numbers add up. One of the most common is, again, for an effective leadership training program, or designing your middle level management to be the coaches and mentors that you need to the front line to develop the next level of middle management. For every dollar spent, it's a $7 return on investment. And I get it. I'm all about revenue growth. For each dollar we spend on our workforce, what's that going to equate to in revenue growth? But the data's there. It's how do you implement those programs? And you don't need the McKinseys, nothing against McKinsey or the Boston Consulting Groups. You don't need them to come in and develop a leadership development program. And in fact, the thing about Talent War Group is repeatability is a core, sort of attribute of any company. The one thing at Talent War Group that we didn't want to do is be your easy button. We'll help you. We'll come in and we'll help develop your leadership development program, work with your leaders so that you can run this in-house and you no longer need so it becomes institutionalized, much like it has with the military. The thing about the military that people don't understand is we expect you to put W's on the board, which is to say mission success. You better, because if you demonstrate that you can't lead your organization to mission success, you're going to be relieved. But more importantly, and it's sometimes often unsaid, is you better be training the next generation.
Yeah, left seat, right seat, cockpit all the time.
Because we know in the military, we always use the sort of analogy that if your NCO is removed from the battlefield, injured, hurt, you could be stepping up 2 positions in a matter of a moment.
Yeah.
And so always training them, and a lot of companies look past that. Again, psychology, most human beings want to leave an organization and see that organization stumble. Why? Because, I was invaluable. Yeah. I was so critical to the success of that organization that they can't do it without me. I had no problems knowing that I needed to be replaceable and that the SEAL teams probably accelerated at a quicker rate after I left. And that brings me a sense of pride is, hey, maybe I did train and I poured into the junior officers below me. I still receive emails from guys that are now commanding SEAL teams because I was the junior officer training course director for the officers that graduated BUDS to turn them into ground force commanders for combat operations within 1 month. 1 month wasn't enough, but I did the best I could, and they were sponges. That was one of the most, loved the combat, got 10 tours, but that tour of teaching the next generation, they were sponges.
So let's take that power, because I'll tell you what you have, right, is you have an industry that's starving for people. We're hundreds of thousands of people below what we need to be at now, and we have half of our industries at risk of starting to retire in the next 5 years. That's why they call it the silver tsunami. The beauty is is we don't need to backfill every position for what it is, because we're adopting these new technologies that are eliminating some, but are creating others. And those are the ones that are going to advance the industry more. Mm-hmm. Now, simultaneously, so put a pin in what you just said, and I'm going to tie it right back to what this industry is starving in, right? So this industry is growing, as I've said, at more than a 20% CAGR, right? And it never slowed down, even with COVID. And in fact, like, we are at a point where it looks like the massive aggregate volume of demand that we're going to need to support AI is going to require us to leave the NFL cities from where we build our data centers today and build them in the suburbs on what they call the edge, and then tie them back in. So we're going to go into more rural, secondary, and third tier markets and build more data centers there so we can have more clusters closer to the people. And that's better for us, because people like me are going to I'm going to go off grid and buy land where I'm not around human beings. Yes. And I know people don't see me, and I could grow my own shit. I could, farm my own shit. Does that make sense? Like, I'm about not needing that, but the information that technology gives me allows me to discover that's where my passion and my purpose is. But we're living in this time where we have us, the consumer, driving the pent up demand for more technology. And then we have industry unable to fulfill those requirements, which is unusual, where most industries this is something that will never change. Our adoption of technology has been conditioned in humans to never really stop. We've never been like, Now, there will be a more harmonious relationship where people like me are going to be like, that phone won't even go in the bedroom with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it'll be plugged in somewhere else, and I'm going to be off grid. I will set alarms on my phone in which to just not touch my phone for 2 hours and leave it alone. I'm going to start creating more emotional separation from the technology, simultaneously using that technology to make myself healthier or more inspired. So I'm getting healthier already with my technology. But this technology surge is so massive that I feel bad for the companies that I get to work for today. I get to work for they call it FAMGA, Facebook, Apple, Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. They represent 80% of the market spend in the world. There's 10 hyperscalers, maybe another 10 baby scalers, but the whole industry is chasing 20 customers, because Amazon's going to build a cloud that some other provider will have. Oracle will build a cloud that TikTok can, they're all changing technologies and sharing and using each other's stuff. And what happens when that happens is this industry is never able to catch up. We're growing and reinventing ourselves every quarter, which is why I said experience doesn't matter, because the way that we build, own, and operate data centers today is not quite the same as what we were doing 3 years ago. Yes. And it's not going to be the same in 3 years from now. So your experience is not as valuable as your character and your personality, which means, do you have a creative passion to learn? Do you going to go out and try to learn how to work through problems on your own, or do you need me to solve them all for you, right? And what's going to happen is the companies themselves, they're going to invest into the primary line of business they use to generate revenue, and it's typically not a human being. They'll engineer their business like they will a machine, where you have a transparent, predictable part of a cog. I was stuck in positions at companies because I would leave companies every 2 years, but I always told people I'm only here for 2 years. And that's because I had cancer, and the doctors told me I wouldn't be able to live we can't guarantee you more than 2 years. And I was like, fuck it. I will live my life as though today, if I was told if I got a call after this podcast, I'm like, dude, in 2 years from now, the exact date is when you die, what I'm doing this afternoon would not change. What I'm doing tomorrow would not change. And what I'm telling you is the industry is growing, and we have amazing people in this industry. Our leaders and our luminaries they really care about society. That's why they're so passion driven to build and advance this. But they just haven't realized that when you're growing like that, when a piece of your machine doesn't work, what do you normally do?
Call people in.
Or you rip out and you replace it with a new piece of machine that can.
Yes.
And people are the machine, right? So what I have is all these companies that are growing at 200-300% because they're all just grabbing as much market share as they can from the growth of emerging technology, that they're not going to invest their money and their time into their culture and their people when they could rip out and replace those people they know right now, I'll hire them. They'll be gone in 3 years. I'll get 2.5 years solid out of them. Then I'll lose 6 months of productivity as I bring on someone else to ramp in. And then by year 3, they're gone. And that's what they build their models off of, is what the attrition is already designed to be at. And labor, like McKinsey, they're the U.S. Navy. They're not going to be able to pivot their ship like what I can. I'm versatile and agile because I'm small, and I'm going to partner with groups like yours, which is the Talent War Group that focuses on talent as well. So I'm like, why don't I go aggregate that part of the world and be like, hey, these companies that are no longer going to invest in their people, totally cool. Let's take that talent and make it a service. Give me your team, outsource everyone but your managers, and give me whatever demands you have, and I'll give it to you as a service on demand. Labor on demand and as a service. And now they're in my incubator, and now I could hire the people that give a shit about human beings, and their only job is going to be focused on inspiring, leading, and growing them. So I need to have companies are not doing a good job of growing and mentoring and training their teams. No. They could either hire groups like you to come in and teach them, or they could just outsource the whole shit to us. There's data center owner operators I'm talking to right now that we help on the CapEx side of deploying their capital and building their own asset. And I normally leave. It's like there's 5 phases of a data center life cycle. I don't operate in all of them yet, but I will. And right now I give the keys over to operations when we're done. I'm like, Tag, we had it, you got it. I hope it works. We ring the bells off it. It works fine.
Call us if you need us.
Yep. And those ops teams, that's where you have 100 to 120 people. They're 24/7, 365. A lot of veterans doing layered physical security, smart hand services, or just, doing the maintenance on the buildings. That's where you could open up more pockets for volume and velocity of more people. And that's where you could help marry the industry from the transitioning veteran. But at the same time, like, there is so much change that's taking place in this industry that now I have to realize that these companies, good. If you want to just focus on growing that and your shareholders or your clients, and in addition to the ones that come in the house, then let me take care of your teams and don't outsource the model for management. You can, that's what your team's for, and that's what we can do. But the optionality that we offer together, right, is, or you can just give me your team. I'll take them off the books, give me the full burden, and I'll bring them back to you as a service. You get them as a staff augmented model. And that way, if they get sick and they can't come to work on Friday, then you get a new one. Like when I'm at home, when you're at home and you have a problem with your plumbing, do you call the plumber and ask for the exact person? Like, just send me a plumber. If that plumber doesn't do it, they're going to bring a different one. And that's as a service model already. And now I think all of labor will expand to that, right? Which is why, there will be a lot of people that, military was plan B for a lot of people, was for us. But it really should have been plan A all along, right? Because look, it would have saved us 1.5 years of our life probably, but we learned a lot in that time. But the crafts, like the trades, the electricians and plumbers and the people that use their hands, glazers, concrete, mason, it doesn't matter. Or coming from the military, I honestly believe that if you were to go into college today and learn a piece of technology, when you graduated 4 years from now, it'd be obsolete and outdated anyway. So why don't we learn soft hand skills like leadership and how to build teams, right? Because building teams is the most important part. Like I was talking to my CRO on the way here, and he was talking to me because I used to tell people we build data centers. And I was like, no, that's not really true. I build teams and they build data centers. And I was like, that's not true either. I'm like, you know what I build? I build leaders, and they build teams and they build data centers, right? That's the Maxwell level 5 of leadership. Yes. It's measured on how many other leaders you create. And then I was like, I actually don't even build teams, and I don't build leaders. I build relationships. That's it. My whole focus is on establishing and cultivating healthy relationships. And when I'm done, as a byproduct of that, I'm going to have teams. I'm going to probably have leaders that could create better teams. And with those people, I'm going to have the ability to go out and build data centers or power generation plants or anything else that we want to build. But first, it starts with building relationships. And that's something that we learn and get conditioned and trained to do in the military, because you said it best. There's people that you worked with that you liked, but you didn't like them on the weekend. But that was okay, because they may have been a son of a bitch, but they're your son of a bitch. I mean, like I got in a fight with a guy on a submarine once in the mid-level head, and we both had black eyes. And that next night we were both on Liberty, and we were in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and someone bumped into that guy. I was the first dude to throw hands at the other guy because he's still my guy, right? So like, that's still my crewman. That's still my, like, we can punch each other in the face all we want because we have that brotherhood, right? But like, no one else gets to do that to him, right? So my thing is building those teams, and teams is where it comes from. Like that's where you come from, but building teams. And people don't know what a team environment looks like. They know what a collection of people feels like, but they don't know what a real team, like if you've seen the Last Dance, I mean, they pressure test each other. They have healthy confrontation. They push each other and they challenge each other. They reward each other. They're there for each other. They make each other feel safe. You could ask stupid questions in front of them, but there's this whole emotional social dynamic that exists, which takes a collection of people that have the ability to sing from the same sheet of music, and that's not the same as what a team is capable of doing, right? And team building starts with relationship building, and that's what we do. That's how we make impact, right?
It's again, you mentioned sort of Maslow's hierarchies of needs. It is a very human, almost intrinsically human to want connection. It's just, we are. And I mean, arguably American society has become more nomadic in that, traditionally back in the, 40s, 50s, 60s, somebody's born in an area, they usually stay in that area.
Yeah, you're good.
Now the ability to pick up and move due to job demands and technology and is there. So relationships have suffered as a society. And I think that's also the division you see. If you can provide a culture where people feel a sense of homecoming and belonging,
that's what we want to build.
I'm telling you, if you as an organization could do that, any business, regardless of any industry, not only will your loyalty and engagement with employees, and we say employees, teammates. They're teammates at different positions within the organization. You're a teammate. You may be
we're not a family. We're not a tribe. We're a team.
When I hear business leaders say, "I'm trying to create a family," I disagree.
Oh, I was dumb as look. Guilty.
We've all said it. Yes,
guilty. I did it.
We're a family. No, actually, we're not. Because at the end of the day, I'm not in charge of how you sort of organize or run your personal finances. I can give you advice. I want to see you do well, but no, we're a high performing team. We're not a family. Yeah. I've got my family. Has my family done anything together as a high performing organization or unit? Not really. I mean, we bicker and that's not what we're there for, but I couldn't imagine a life without being part of a team. And I'm always, and this is what is hard for the transition for any veteran, is where's my next team? Where is my next team?
Yeah, that's exactly what they're looking for.
And this is why, again, you look at American education, and actually McCraven tried to do this at UT when he was the chancellor, and he was wildly unsuccessful. Not by anything he did, but okay, first off, higher education, I never told you, when I graduated the MBA program and retired, actually before retirement, I had like 120 days of leave. I took it to go take executive director of all veteran services for the Texas A&M system.
Oh, wow.
And they've got 12 campuses. John Sharp is renowned, well-respected, and he's the one that personally recruited me because I'd stood something up called the Vetted Foundation with the help of a little bit of help from Admiral McCraven, a guy named General Tony Cuccolo, and then Admiral Bobby Inman, who I'm sure you know that name in Austin. And it was praised by Huffington Post as having the potential to revolutionize the way that veterans exit the military. And we ran into politics because I didn't understand the battlefield. It was a wake-up call for me and pissed off somebody within the Texas Veteran Commission, the guy who runs it, and basically roadblocked us every which way. And I eventually said, then take it. You guys stand it up. I don't care who gets credit. The program has merit. But it took 3 days to recognize that higher education was fiefdoms. It was fiefdoms, and I looked at my fiance at the time, now my wife, and I said, 6 months. I'm going to make this place better. I'm going to set the next guy up for success, and I'm going to wait to tell them that I'm leaving. I gave them a solid, was it 3 or 4 months? Said, hey, I'm leaving because I just don't want to be in this type of environment where there is no team whatsoever. It's like the CIA. Everyone's stabbing each other in the back to grow their to dig their own trench deeper. But he tried to institute leadership development for freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors, 3 credit class in leadership development. His vision was beautiful. I have no doubt that the University of Texas system produces good practitioners within their respective roles or professions or industries, but I want to produce leaders within industry. American education no longer teaches the core values, leadership principles, attributes, concepts, like we did, and maybe I'm a somewhat warped because I went through Catholic and then Jesuit education where they were honing in on character and conduct and behaviors and leadership. But people don't get that in higher education. And then if they step into an industry that's not well led, then they're conditioned because of their environment to think, well, this is just how you lead. You bark orders, you micromanage people. They're beneath you. They do what you say. basically makes you a boss, which again, go back to John Maxwell's 5 levels of leadership. When people follow you for your positional authority alone, that produces the bare minimum results. Second level of, and Chris Fussell was huge about this, the guy who I consider one of my foremost mentors. Level 2 is about building relationships. That's actually leading from the heart, actually loving and caring about your people. And one of the things I used to do is when I would get guys that were new is I had like 5 pages of answers I wanted. It was the best way. Yeah, I could have asked them, but I said, hey, just go fill this out for me. It had, what is your spouse's name, your husband and your wife, where were you born, raised, your parents, how many brothers, ages, kids, ages, names, dates of birth. Where do you want to be in 5 years? What certifications do you want? I wanted to know where they wanted to be. Even if somebody was candid enough to say, like, I'm just doing SEALs for 6 years and then I want to go to law school. And finding a way to connect with them and saying, hey, there are translations between special operations and being a lawyer, and what you learn here may set you up to be a phenomenal leader within law. It's putting the time. And this is why not every, I'm going to tell you this, and you know this. If you're not willing to sacrifice your own self, and also that means time with your family to be a leader of any organization, then things aren't going to work out.
Yeah.
Leadership comes at a severe sacrifice. And people, there's a difference between the transactional boss and the boss that people know the content of the character and follow you for who you are and what you do for them. And that you are selfless in a lot of ways, that you put their needs in front of your own. People will move heaven and earth for those bosses. Hey guys, we're under a serious crunch right now. We're behind schedule. We're over budget. I'm going to need double the effort, if not 3 times the effort over the next 3 weeks. We need to get this done. We need to get it done right. People will, they'll bitch and gripe. That's just people, but they'll get it done. And you've got to find ways, even leadership development. I often hear from business leaders, we just don't have the time to pull our people offline. That's bullshit. That's a cop-out. Good leaders make time.
Well, that's one thing the military has always done. Like you said, that career counseling type of element that you were applying to your soldiers or your sailors, that doesn't exist too much. And look, every civilian group, like I'm a startup. I had a call the other day actually from a kid that was working for us. He went Army National Guard. He's down in Enterprise, Alabama, going to flight school right now. Awesome kid. And he was like, hey, I just wanted to let you know, he's a great kid. He worked for us. One of the best things you can do at that age sometimes is fire him, right? And let him know, like, we're not your mom and dad. Like when you are coming out of college, you're used to always having there's no 3-strike rule. There's 10 of them. Mom and dad will tougher, all these things. And sometimes you get these, it's hard to flip the switch to be an adult as a youth or a young person when you're really working in one of your first jobs, because the level of mediocrity that you have, like, what are you doing going and working out in the middle of, 10:30 in the morning, work out in the early morning like the rest of us. You got calls at 10:30, you know what I'm saying? And then eventually you had up all these bad habits, and we're not your parents. So we say, hey man, this ain't for you, right? And it doesn't mean you're not a good person, but this ain't for you, right?
You need to go fail some more. You need to see that life is getting real.
Getting fired is the greatest thing that can happen to people. I've been fired once in my life. Everyone should be fired at least once in their life, right? And it's a humbling experience. And you're like, fuck, man, this is the real world. I don't get away with excuses all the time anymore. Like, people don't take my bullshit anymore. I better start holding myself accountable to another level. And he's in the Army, he gets it, and he gave me a call and he's like, hey man, I just want to let you know, this and that, I appreciate it. And I go, hey, listen, I need to let you know, I'm really happy for you. I'm really proud of you. But I want you to know, I just started a business and I'm a startup CEO. And I have the right to make as many fucking mistakes as every other employee at my company. I create a culture where you can fail and fail forward and learn. You just don't get to do the same thing over and over again. But man, I want you to go fail and learn. And I want you to go teach us how to not do that, right? Like, we're all learning and failing forward. And then we all come back and we distribute that knowledge and wisdom. Like, hey, go left, don't go right. You know what I'm saying? It could be as simple as that sometimes, but I have to learn. We all started from somewhere, right? You weren't a CEO, you had to become one. And there's lessons and humbling, lonely, painful lessons that are learned in that role, right? And I remember he was talking to me. I was like, I need you to understand, like, to build something great, it's not great day one. You have to take the beatings that come with the mistakes that you make in leadership. Like, I don't get mad at my team when they make mistakes, because you could add up all of their mistakes and they're never going to be as big as the ones that I make that have a greater impact on this team. So I'm like, hey man, now you know how not to do it. Do it again, and we're going to have
we're going to have a conversation.
But that's that. You just paid $50,000 to learn that lesson. Let's make sure you teach it to everybody else now, because that's how much it costs in the decisions that we make.
Spreading information across the organization based off your failures, and it starts with the senior leader.
And it comes from technology.
So there are a lot of parallels between special operations and the tech sector, and the fact that there are two organizations or professions or industries, whatever you want to call them, that have learned this formula to fail quickly and fail often.
It's a healthy thing.
Forward. Yes.
It's bloodletting.
Fail quickly, learn quick. Fail fast, learn quickly, and just keep iterating. And there's a lot of parallels in that regard. I did work with a tech company, and again, I'm not going to name it. It was during COVID, so I had to do it virtually. But basically, they're C-suite, senior VPs. Interesting. So they wanted me, based off of the talent war, to just come in and sort of talk to the leaders. There's about 50 of them on the virtual. And so I was just asking questions. This is the best way. Asking questions is an art, and the quality of your questions matter to get to the root of any problem. And so I was starting to get there, and it dawned on me, I think I know the problem. So I asked, how readily can you admit a mistake within your organization? And they all pretty much laughed. And here's an organization that's a powerhouse in the United States. And the chief learning officer, a guy who I highly respected, he said, Mike, I'll answer for the group. If you admit a mistake within this organization, especially at this level, you end up with a bullseye on your back. And I said, therein is your problem. Is you need to reset your culture to put that bullseye on the front, to create a truly learning organization. Say, everyone, I made this mistake and I want you to know about it, so that if you end up in the same circumstances or you're rising to my position, you don't repeat that same mistake. Everything is a leadership or learning opportunity if you reframe your mindset to view it. Now, there is a point. I did work with an organization that said, well, no one should ever truly really have to be fired. And I'm like,
don't believe that either.
I'm like, that I absolutely disagree with that. When somebody lacks character or integrity, that's not a leader's problem.
Culture. If they're harmful to the culture, and then period, then
you remove them. And dude, you look at, and I know a lot of people within this industry. I had the pleasure of growing up in Silicon Valley. There was a guy known as the secret coach of Silicon Valley, or the $1 trillion coach. His name was Bill Campbell. Do you know that name? Bill was Bill was a football,
basketball, right?
Pennsylvania, coal mining town. Played football at, I think, Brown University. Became a football coach at both Boston College and Brown, and then made the leap to IBM and eventually went to Apple. He was the one behind the famous 1984 commercial during the Super Bowl.
Oh, okay.
The announcement of the Mac, which Steve Jobs looked at him and says, if this fails, it's your ass on the line. It was highly successful. He eventually became the director of the board for Apple and was very close to Steve and a mentor to Steve. I mean, he Sergey Brin's of the world, Mark Benioff. Yes. Mark Benioff and Andreessen, Mark Andreessen.
Okay.
And
you know Mark Benioff too, or he did?
Well, he actually set up a trip for us where I brought like 20 SEALs to Silicon Valley. We sat down with Larry Ellison. Larry Ellison, who's a pretty secluded dude, brought us into his home. Sergey Brin, Mark Benioff, Mark Andreessen, and it was Ben Horowitz, who wrote often about Bill Campbell. Carol Bartz, who I think was one of the first major female CEOs in Silicon Valley, Yahoo, if I'm not incorrect. Yep. Dude, it was supposed to be a leadership exchange. It was a one-way street. We were listening and taking notes. And then Bill owns a bar called the Old Pro in Palo Alto. And halfway through the week, we said, hey, Bill, do you have a space we can use on Friday just for our group, just to discuss everything that we've heard? He's like, yeah, you get to have the room above the Old Pro, which anyone in Palo Alto knows what it is. We were there for like 8 hours. I mean, cutting edge organizations. And this is why I have such respect for the tech culture. But you talk about, everyone throws the word transformational out. Bill was a transformational leader. I mean, he was the ultimate mentor to the elite within, and they'll admit it. And he's now no longer with us, basically was suffering from cancer. I had the pleasure of meeting him, but it's inspirational, transformational leaders like that that light 1,000 candles, one candle that lights 1,000 candles. And that's, man, that is my legacy that I'm concerned about is, am I a single candle that maybe lit a few others, or am I that guy who lit 1,000? And I want to do it with authenticity and genuine nature. And hence, I'm not on social media. Like we both have this. I don't want to be the loud guy. One thing about social media is it's given everyone a microphone, a lot of people without credibility. And credibility I view as good experience. Show me what you've done.
Sure.
Do I want to be famous? No, I want to be renowned. And if that means I just impacted the people in the local community, so be it. But transformational leader, here's my definition. It's turning the compliant into the willing. It goes back to that level 3 leadership where you've combined positional authority with relationships. People follow you for who you are and how you look out for them. And how you look out for them is also accountability.
No, I love it. The genesis for this was to tie some things together and then bring this thing home is not to touch on a sensitive thing. I hope it wouldn't be. I was struggling about 1.5 years ago, or maybe longer than that. And I had hit a plateau where I was no longer as effective as I could have been as a leader, and I had to continue to grow. And I also reached a point where we all have, I say there's 3 levels of influencers in our lives as we grow, right? There's those that are literally guides, and guides could be anybody. They don't have to be anybody that inspires you. You honestly, you don't even have to trust them sometimes. Well, you have to trust them enough that they're valid, right? That they've done it, right? And that's someone that's literally done it. Like, go down the road, go down this way, 3 lights, make a right, and on the second light, go left. They've done it, so they could tell you, and you're like, good, I could do that. Thank you for the map. That's a guide. That's someone that's a data point. Now, you have mentors, and those are big differences, right? In my opinion, and mentors is a subjective term to a lot of people. For me, a mentor was someone that maybe they can inspire me. Hey, remember where you came from. You got this. They've never done it, but like they believe in you and they know what the process is and they're going to be right there. And you know that you have them. And there's greatness in knowing that like who stands in front of you, who stands beside you, and who stands behind you matters, right? And having someone knowing where they're at is important. Like we need those people. No matter how tough we are, we're never as tough as we are with 2 of us together or 3 of us together. And the last is a sponsor. And the difference in the sponsor is the one that, like, the mentor is going to speak to you. And they're going to be like, hey, man, you got this. You're great. They don't have the ability to speak for you in a room when they're not there. They don't have the validation for it. They're not like a guide level of experience. But a sponsor is someone who's been a guide and they know the rules and they know the routes and they've mentored you. They know what you're capable of, but they love you so much now they sponsor you so they don't take your bullshit. So the conversations with sponsors aren't like, man, you got this. They're more like, you need to pull your entire head from your ass.
Yes.
And you need to undo that because I don't know why you say that. You need to stop doing that immediately.
Yes.
But when that's the conversations you have in front of them. But when you're not in front of them, they're speaking for you on your behalf in rooms that you don't sit in. And they're like, you have no idea what you're talking about. That guy has it on lockdown. Trust him. There's no one better. So he's going to advocate for me while he simultaneously beats the shit out of me. And I have all of those people. And we have to have them. And, I have a mentor who's now a sponsor who's almost, I'm not embarrassed to admit this, but he's almost predicted everything that would happen to me in the course of my journey as a 5-year CEO. I'm 4.5 years into it. From the ups and downs to the fetal position, the insecurities, the battles I have with myself, the bouts of loneliness, the insecurities I have, the desires not to quit, but the questioning of why I do it when there's, it's not instantaneous. It's not like it's instant where you find satisfaction. You're farming, you're planting seeds and then hoping that the right rain, the right sunlight lets something to cultivate to take root. And you may be months until you see it emerge. And then from that point, you're like, okay, we're onto something. And that may trigger some sort of thing. But what happened is this guy is a titan in this industry. He's one of the pioneers in this industry and everybody knows who he is. And he he predicted everything from the amount of betrayals that I would have and the amount of times that I've had my heart broken from people that, I thought like this was a family. And then you learn this is a high performing team. Families don't fuck each other like that. You know what I'm saying? And then you have the betrayals and all the things that have come as a part of that. But there's so many beautiful things that come from it as well. All the growth, the scars. And he predicted all of these things. And he's like, hey, you know what? You're out of balance, right? He's like, you need more female leadership in the things that you're doing. He's a very diverse-based CEO. He's got a powerhouse of women all around him. And I was like, okay, well then, what do I know? And my team had reached out to Carly already, and I met Carly, and poor Carly had to deal with me, having a couple vomits because we aligned because we shared the same thing. You guys are trying to help veterans. I'm trying to help veterans. I'm not trying to help veterans as much as I am, but that's a byproduct of what my core purpose of a business. My mission is to build emerging technology stacks that improve the lives of everyone in the world. My purpose is to stop the cycle of suicide within the veteran community. We all know people that have hurt themselves. I got people on my team that have put their guns in their mouths before, right? So like my job is to make sure that those people that I believe that they could serve this industry with the same level of integrity and character that they did when they were in a uniform. And they could do it with this industry that's starving for talent and character, right? So they don't need the experience because what does it matter? We don't do it like that anymore. Figure out how we're going to be doing it in 3 years from now. That's the value, right? But for me, I had hit limits. People had helped me figure things out. And I realized that I had a big blind spot, and I brought in some of that. And I realized now that as I'm growing, there's people that are like, hey, where did you get that? Like I have a good buddy of mine that I used to work with at HP. He's up in Chicago and he's a savage of a man, right? And he's done Ironman. He's uncommon. And maybe that's another reason why he and I always got along, right?
Yes.
But there are people like him that regardless of how savage he is, we all need help. We all are struggling. If you're telling me that you have insecurities and blind spots that you're struggling through, it's like, cool. So you're fucking human then? Cool. The rest of us are too. So I have just as much like, look, I could never have been a Navy SEAL. I never tried. Wouldn't say I would have passed if I could have dealt with the coldness, but I know that I'm okay with that. Not everyone has that. It's a different person upstairs that has the emotional range and the ability to endure that much of emotional range of pain and physical pain to be able to do that, right? No desire, no capability. But I do have the desire that you have, and that's to go help those that do, right? It doesn't have to be tier 1 assets. They don't have to be submariners. I've hired shore patrol to MP to you name it.
Engineers.
I do not care. I care about what their ICANN is better than their IQ. Their experience is only valid if they've literally had to deal with things that mattered for life and death. If they've had that emotional range, then they've been pressure tested in enough ranges to where I could teach them the lexicon of a vertical, right? Because this industry is just a product of immersion. Think the reason why Carly's able to crush it and thrive is because she's an interpreter and speaks languages. This is just another language. I'm like, do you not be intimidated by the science or the technology of this industry? Just learn the language. Mm. And the same for you is what I was trying to say when we first talked. I'm like, hey, bro, if I can help people, and what do I know? Imagine the impact that you can make. And I love and care about two groups of communities. One is the veteran community, and the other is this data center community, which is very small, very ancestral, because we are not been emerging yet as a mainstream sport. I'd say before the end of this year, the Kobe Bryants and the Michael Jordans and the Wayne Gretzkys of this industry will be just as well known as the Bill Gates and the Steve Jobs and because they are changing communities and changing society. And this industry, there is no industry on earth that has the ability to impact humanity greater than data centers, because the demand of adoption of technology means a greater demand of power, and a greater demand of power will force us to stop kicking the can down the road in what we do for our primary source of energy. And we will end up adopting something in 10 years from now, which will be probably nuclear. And when we use nuclear, that'll have hands down the greatest impact on climate. And I think that when the technology that we're building allows us to interpret it and understand it in a way that we can process it, because we're feeding it everything we know. At some point, it's going to be like, all right, settle down. This is what we have to address without removing the emotion, while removing the emotion and leaving the objectivity of science and truth and fact and all those things that everyone else validates as accurate. I mean, we don't have anything that's there yet, but we will. We will have a piece of technology. It'll be like a Data from Star Wars or Star Trek, where you could ask it a question. It's going to be like, look, you don't want to do that because you have a 0.000 percentage of, whatever. And you're gonna be like, all right, cool. We're not going to do that now. Because if I can handicap myself in reality with truth, then I'm going to. And that's the technology will allow us to do that. That's what's going to create more harmony, I think, too. But it also today is going to allow us to create a healthy relationship with technology, much like what we did with fast food. Every industrial revolution has a change. We all adopted it. We all raced to it. We all loved it until we all figured out what it was all about. And we're like, maybe not so much, right? We're going to do the same with technology, right? We're still going to use it to the highest good, but we will find a healthier balance, and it'll have less of an emotional impact on us. And we will have a greater ability to have better relationships with people. It starts with the teams that we build, right? So for now, I felt like you and I should be teaming more on trying to figure out, because like, bro, I can't inspire those people like you can. I could get on a stage for 15 minutes and maybe have something that's fleeting, but I'm not making an impact on a stage. You can, right? And there's others that are like you that can. And there are people that they don't need to be inspired. They need to be given tools, and they need to be given tools that allow them to understand how to adopt discipline, to leverage those tools to have the greatest impact on themselves. I think that people want to be better. I think that you could look at people and tell how much they love themselves based on how well they take care of themselves. And I think that people are finding a greater love for themselves. Physically, mentally, and emotionally, you're seeing people invest more into themselves.
You say something that took me decades, in fact, wearing out in the military and saying, I'm out of gas. I'm out of gas. And it was a great leader said, Mike, you failed you took the leaders eat last to heart. He said, to the point of, you went full, you know what? You
got to put your mask on now.
Yes, in order to be a better leader, you sometimes have to take better care of yourself in order to show up as a whole person for the people that need you.
Selfish for you, selfless for the team. That's what it is, right? Because if you don't take care, well, first of all, if you can't lead yourself, you can't lead others. If you don't give yourself 100%, there's no way you're going to give us 100%. And the amount of output and productivity you can create by putting yourself first allows you to be at 100%, where you have a greater impact. Where if you're giving everybody else everything and then you're trying to operate at your level at 20%, you will falter.
Now somebody's going to hear that and say, well, I always need to take, no, there's a balance.
There's
a dichotomy to every single thing. With all leadership principles, there's this balance, and therein lies a problem.
That balance
where is that balance?
That balance that you talk about, that's your IP. Mike, that's what you have to help. That balance is different for us. The unique thing about us human beings is we all think differently, and we all have a different emotional response to everything. So there's no silver bullet, but balance is the answer. It's just people are like, look, thanks, Mike. Cool. I need some balance. Where do I find it?
Yeah.
So that's the part is where we have to take what we've gained from the military, and we have to break it down to where we can feed it to our teams, so that we can help figure out how to teach everyone how to create healthy relationships, so that we can get a higher level of output and productivity,
spiritually and physically. And dude, as you talk about
out as a business, it turns out to be more economically
efficient.
It's
the same thing. It's the culture is based off the same
retention, everything.
Intentionality is such a beautiful thing. It actually forces you to slow down and be a little more deliberate with your actions, which is not a bad thing. But not when a fire's taking place, there's little intentionality. You're reacting to an in extremis situation for which requires immediate action. Do you remember the old phrase in the military, an ounce of appearance is worth a pound of performance?
I haven't heard that one, but I like it.
An ounce of appearance is worth a pound of performance. It goes to Malcolm Gladwell. You brought him up. It was like 3 South by Southwest. I go to a coffee shop to knock some work out. And lo and behold, as I sit down, I look across and there's Malcolm Gladwell. And it took me everything not to get up and
give
just
a celebrity
bug
on
him. And I'm like,
man,
I'd love just 5 minutes of your time, but phenomenal. But it's that rapid cognition. Everyone sizes somebody up within those first moments.
Sure.
It's just, again, it is human nature, and it's our judgment gene checks in, and how often I've been wrong on so many people where I'm like, I don't like that dude. And then a year later, you fast forward and it's like, brother, what's up, buddy? Hugs. It changes. But Kirk, this has been, balance within an industry with such high demand. That is a industry-wide problem. I mean,
but we
burnout.
Need to solve it. We need to figure it out, because that's what helps
Burnout
souls.
is going to be massive. So
we're already seeing it.
How do we address that problem? And again, this is where human performance comes into play on helping people to deal with stress, time management, overall health, mental and spiritual fitness. I call it fitness because that's what it is as well. And if your organization within this industry is not doing that, you need to go find the right people. And I love it. Whoop, Dr. Kristen Holmes she studied high performing athletes, high performing business leaders, special operations, just a genius. You even talk about shift workers. Saw she just released something that, and I hate to put this out, but shift workers, you're talking people that are night shift workers for like 30 years, removes 15 years of life.
I saw something about that. I was like, damn, man. Yeah, you got to really reevaluate. I mean, like it's untenable to do that for so long, but look how many times.
So it just requires evolution. We implement something to maintain or to achieve balance. And then you find 1 year later that technique that maybe worked for 12 to 8 months.
I grew it. Again. Well, that was my biggest, like I always ask my team, I'm like, what do you think that your biggest mistake was of last year, last quarter, whatever? And mine, I was with some friends last night. I was like, I think the biggest mistake I made last year was I didn't play the long game on people. So I was hiring people that I needed and they were meeting the needs that I had. And then 2 quarters later, I'd outgrow them. So it was almost like the equivalency of them falling right out of the back of my Peloton as I'm rolling and we're getting faster. And it's a challenge. It sucks as a leader because you care about people and you don't want to have to. So you're figuring out how to navigate through the complexities of growth and scale. And some people are going to be on your team for a season and some are going to be there forever. Right. And I had to learn that, like, some are not there forever, and that's okay too, because we'll go help them find jobs. Like,
I bet Patty McCord, first off, Netflix is a massive,
they do a lot of streaming.
Yes. Yep. So, which requires a lot of power, a lot of data. Patty McCord was the chief talent officer of Netflix. This woman is renowned. She is a lion. Have you ever checked the Netflix culture deck?
No.
Have you ever? Go Google it. Anyone can Google it. Netflix culture deck. It'll pop up PDF. Every leader should take at least 30 minutes to read through this thing. And I love how she reframed it for me. And I've never even met her, but I'm like, within the talent sort of HR world, she is a god next to women like Tracy Keogh, who's the CHRO of Hewlett Packard. And she said, letting people go, you need to reframe it and look at it as actually you're doing them a justice to go find a culture where they're going to thrive. And of course she said, hey, the goal is all stars, A players in every seat. Is that possible in an organization? No, but that's the goal. It should be the goal.
Yeah.
But she said, when you let people go, you're doing them a service to go find a culture and an organization where they're going to thrive.
I use Drew Brees as a great example for that. Okay. Graduated, great in college, went to the wrong NFL team, contemplated not playing, goes to the right team, wins the Super Bowl and is MVP.
As much as I hate the Saints, but
but it's an example of where, like,
exactly.
I do believe there are times where I have incredible talent on my team. I'm like, this may be the wrong team. The beauty about having a recruiting company is, I'm like, I was just doing a town hall the other day and I'm like, hey, do me a favor. If you're not happy here, we get it. We ain't for everybody. But let us know. We'll find you a job with one of our clients. We have a lot of clients. So I do staff augmentation and staff placement. I'm like, at least let me make sure that we all could make some money on your transition out. I'll even share some with you or something. Yeah. Let's make it worth your time. But I'm like, you're allowed to not be happy and want to go somewhere else. You're allowed to outgrow us. Like, we could be a stepping stone for you too. I'm not trying to be the end solution for everybody, but I do know that if I could create an incubator where I can aggregate more transitioning veterans and then align it with the demands and the needs of one vertical. I'm not focused on everything. I don't give a shit about every other industry. Every other industry ties back to technology, which ties back to my industry. Yes. My industry is the only one that matters, right? And I say that selfishly, but I do think that, like, I do not give a shit about the automotive industry as much as I do about the impact it has on technology. Same with healthcare, same with finance or manufacturing or retail. Just tell me how it impacts what I do in data centers and how we have to deploy more capacity or IT capacity to support the demand of that technology. That's what I care about, because then it has an impact that I could directly correlate to humans. All right, well, this is going to create this many jobs and this is just this many impacts or opportunities to help this many souls. So the dashboard is measured on both the impact to society or souls that we have and the impact that we do to our bottom line. It can't just be one thing or the other, but there are businesses that are one thing or the other, and I'm okay with that. Let's go harness that. Let's you and I team up and figure out how we solve the talent war, right? Because I didn't expect to or try to get through all of your shit today, because I figured we'd break these down in pieces, because this is the human reset. This podcast will fall more on my human reset. And I say that because I'm doing this podcast series right now where I'm bringing on the biggest luminaries in the world on data centers, right? The Henry Ford of our industry was just on. I had the guy that built the Microsoft cloud, who Bill Gates hired, was on. Oz Morales' podcast goes out today. He built Amazon's cloud. Christian Bellotti did the Microsoft one, right? So, and there's about 25 luminaries of this industry. And I just met with one of them yesterday. His name's Bill Stein. He was the founding CFO of Digital Realty Trust that became the CEO. I mean, he took it public and then later became the CEO. And from a space, power, and cooling perspective, they're the largest publicly traded mission critical REIT in the world, probably. From a market cap, I think they're second to Equinix, but they have more space, power, and volume, probably more capacity. They're a wholesaler where Equinix is typically retail. And the thing is these people built this industry. And now I have all of them. And Dave Ferdman, 2-time CEO of CyrusOne, he's coming on. That was a David versus Goliath model that built and grew this industry. It would be like, it's an oligopoly. It's like the airline industry. You go to the airport, you know that the 7 airlines that are going to be there all the time, but there's probably 2 or 3 regional pocket ones too. It's like that in Hawaii. It's like that in New York. And this industry is an oligopoly. We're not even trying to target like 1,000 people. There's 45 operators that control the entire technology world, basically. I mean, there's more than that, but the ones that control it,
oligarchs. Yeah, and that's not a bad thing. Good on them. Damn, to have the title the Henry Ford of your industry thrown on you.
Hell yeah. There's like 5 of them.
Well done. Well played, sir. Well played.
Look, he's a luminary and a pioneer, and he was just on here talking about fission, fusion, and hydrogen because now power. So like I'm doing a podcast series with all these industry studs talking about the birth of this industry. We're going to we're going to collect like 4 hours of content from the founders of this industry to make a documentary that'll go to PBS that talks about the history of this industry. Because in 2 years from now, when this industry is mainstream to the level in which everybody knows what it is, right? It took 40 years for electricity, took 30-something years for the automobile, it took so many years for the cell phone, on and so forth, until 5 days for ChatGPT, right? What I'm saying is this industry will be just as popular as every other mainstream professional sport, and we will all know we know who the celebrities of basketball are and football and baseball and technology. This
just takes time.
These guys that I've interviewed will sit along those same levels and they will be held in that same reverence. And we get to have these conversations before this industry explodes because it's just a powder keg waiting to go off. How much more demand of technology does it take before finally the media figures out how to define a construct or a message or a narrative around us? The only reason why they don't talk about us is because they don't know how. It's a hard asset class to define just for investors. Institutional investors that are like, yeah, man, it's not like traditional real estate, so don't look at it like that. We don't sell it on square foot. We sell it based on power. And it's not like regular technology because we're also selling a shit ton of real estate, right? And the densities are different. The topology or footprint of technology changes due to the advancements of technology. The requirements for power just gets higher.
Well, hopefully the stories are told sooner rather than later. I mean, look at it. Again, going back to a military example. Could you imagine if Band of Brothers was made in the 1960s, not in the 2000s?
No.
It took that long to tell that story.
Yeah.
But with this, given the acceleration in the timeline, these guys sound like phenomenal leaders like yourself. There's a lot to learn from people who are pioneers within industry.
I love it.
And I think your labor shortage with educating the mass majority may take care of itself to a degree.
I think that it takes a few podcasts and a few people that are going to invest in this. Like I invest a lot in advancing the industry and I bring on all those specialists, but I have to bring on people that are, before we could be great professionals, we have to be good people. And some people are stuck. Some people came out of COVID and rediscovered new things about themselves, and they know that they want to advance or achieve something, but they just don't know how. They don't know where to begin.
They don't know the first step. Yeah. Yes. And God bless all the mentors who've lit the path for us. And then sometimes you just got to say, hey, go that path. You're gonna have to figure the rest out on your own. But it should become a little more apparent.
Mike, I want this to be iterative because this is an announcement that I'm excited to make. But last year I did a panel at DCAC with a celebrity veteran. For the first time we used technology, they could all scan a code up there and they were able to ask you questions in real time. They were asking me the questions and I was reading them to the person. And it was really cool because they were anonymous. So people were able to ask questions and expose vulnerabilities and insecurities and things that they really, because no one gave a shit who the 1,000 people in the audience asked that question. And I'm excited because I hope to be able to do that with you this year.
I would love to.
And let's give let's give a voice to this platform of leaders within this industry. Because I mean, it may not be the largest data center conference in the industry, but it'll have the most influential people in this industry there. Right. And it's the
Bigger's not always better.
It's the ones that move the needle and matter most that will be at this conference, along with the leaders that are students of this industry.
Yes.
And giving them all the knowledge they need to know about this industry is part of my duty and responsibility with that. But what is that good for if they don't know how to conduct themselves from the constitution of human? Like, hey man, I want to be better, but what does a good habit look like? To eat better, to have my nutrition right, to get my sleep right, to get my fitness right. What happens? Like, I'm too tired to work out. Well, you're telling me now if I work out more, I'm going to have more energy? Well, shit, let's give that a shot. But they just don't know. And we take for granted what people don't know. Just because they're older doesn't mean they haven't figured out, right? So I think there's a lot of professionals here that are going to be inspired by knowing that, one, we're taking a magnitude of leadership that you have to offer and exposing it to the aperture of this industry is going to get wider for you. And that means the impact and the potential of impact you have will be greater. At some point, like for now, at least give them the name of how they could contact you and reach out to you. But the reality is we didn't even get into what you service and how you know, what you have to offer. But I think that the spirit of what you have to offer has come out in this podcast. Go find Mike Sarraille online, go to his website, you know, and he's going to walk through those things and just begin a conversation. Hopefully you're approachable enough to even, you know, the mid-level manager of this company that has a small team of only 4 or 5 people. Maybe they're not a huge company with a huge bunch of stuff, but we could help people. We'll just figure out a way on how we do it and what capacity, but I don't want to speak for you.
No. I welcome conversations in when it comes to professionalism, you treat all people with empathy, kindness, and respect. You know, great line that has been bestowed upon me, and I'm not on the way up. I have no notions about that. Treat people well on the way up because you're going to see those same people on the way down.
So let me tell you, my biggest mentor, he's on my board. The best advice, every time I see him, I always ask him one question. The first thing I see him is I give him a hug. I go, what advice do you have for me today? It's the first question he always gets.
It's a great question.
What advice do you have for me today? And the first advice he ever gave me was, be careful the toes you step on today because they're connected to the ass you'll kiss tomorrow. So it's the same as what you just said, you know, the ups and downs, but that's true. And that has had the greatest impact on my career because at that point forward, I looked at everybody not for who they were today, but what they may be one day. And I invested into them with those relationships, knowing that I may not be able to help you today, but one day, maybe I can. And if I can invest in that relationship now, when there's no value or no gain that I get from it, then that could be a more authentic and genuine relationship versus something that's transactional or to only my advantage today. So I invest into people that I just want to help people as many as I can.
And I don't know where this notion came that you have to crush others to rise to the top. You don't. There's if you're trying to expedite that rise, maybe.
But I think that was Cain and Abel. I came back as biblical, right?
You can do it with professionalism class, and you can do it. There's a right way and there's a wrong way, even though the outcomes may be the same. I mean, have you ever read Once an Eagle?
Mm-mm.
This is like mandatory reading for like the academies. It's Sam Damon and Corey Maskingill, both make general from World War I all the way to Vietnam. One, you know, Sam Damon is a soldier's leader, a soldier's general, and Corey Maskingill is the most political, backstabbing, and it's just that protagonist, antagonist, both arrive at the same outcome. He ends up, you know, ruining his career by just his lack of character. But great book. It's fictional history, but it's just a mandatory read for leaders, much along
I'll get it.
Team of Teams. So MikeSarraille.com. I always say F my life. I now have a website with my name on it.
Well, the cool thing is your last name is not the easiest to spell. But if you go into Google and you put Mike and you start sporting the first few letters,
Sarr,
it'll come up. Yeah, you're in there. You're in the search. So there's no excuse. Or reach out to me and let me help you get connected. But listen, this is just the beginning. This ain't the end. And I need help. This industry needs.
We all need help.
Look, like I said, it doesn't starve in intelligence. We got a lot of big fat brains that can do long division way better than you and I. But what we do need is some people that know. They just need to know where to start. They want to be great leaders and they're smart. They just don't know where to begin.
And you know the benefit of. I'm industry agnostic. I just love working with leaders that are trying to make better organizations and optimize their culture and ultimately grow their organizational capacity, which is a huge subject we didn't talk about. But the amount I learned from working with leaders in different industries, it's not me preaching on a pulpit. It is a two-way street. And sometimes I walk out of a company and I'm like, oh, they don't realize it, but I learned more from them than they did from me.
Well, look, we look forward to to talking with you again. Thank you for investing so much of your heart and your soul and your passion to helping communities and society. And I like to be able to play within your orbit and harness some of that with what we're doing, because this industry is starving for talent, right? And you're the CEO of the Talent War Group.
Fill the bus with good people and amazing things happen.
Listen, man, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining the data center industry with this conversation. Thank you for joining the data center revolution. And again, I look forward to introducing you on stage at DCAC this September as a person that could help inspire these people and give them some basic skills on how they could go and level up and just keep iterating. I mean, it's a journey. We don't ever arrive. We just keep leveling up.
Amen. Thanks for having me, Kirk.
Thanks for being here, Mike. Thanks for joining the revolution, buddy.
All right, guys.